Hello Internet, I'm Stealthweasle01 and this is my first actual video for One Does Not Simply Make a YouTube channel. Since we decided that our first few videos should be nice and simple, we decided to start with a few top 10s. So, my choice? Top 10 animes I've watched. Before I start, let me say this right now. I haven't seen a huge amount of anime, so most of the common favorites likely won't show up. Also, my ground rules to qualify the list are as such. 1. I must have seriously watched it. If I've only seen 1 or 2 episodes on TV by accident, then it's not qualifying. I'm sorry to all you Gundam fans in advance. Number 2. It must be anime. There are some cartoons that would have been able to qualify for this. Avatar: The Last Airbender, for instance. But it's a cartoon, so it can't. Though honestly, it probably would have made somewhere in the top 5. Unless you count the movie, of course. Disclaimer: I don't own any of the series mentioned here, these are just my opinions. Limited list or not, I did this by category. 3 of them, in fact. Category 1, action. Whether it's for fights, suspense, or surprise, the thing that usually makes an anime better than its manga is you can see how they move around and fight. And also, the best of anime have kick-ass music to go with it. Category 2, characters. A show without interesting characters really never makes you remember. In fact, for me, number 8 is the only exception to that in my entire life. This category also covers character development and character backstories, because what made them what they are and how they change has always just been interesting to me. 3. Story. Maybe this is just a personal opinion, but a TV show with no story isn't really a show, it's just a bunch of moving pictures. Hopefully, as we go up, you'll notice that they start getting more complicated. One last thing. Now, my personal preference does come into play on this. Hey, it is my top 10. But it actually didn't really affect the order that much. But now, let's get down to business. Number 10. Hellsing Ultimate OVA. Some of you may be asking, what's Hellsing? The rest of you are asking, why the fuck is this only number 10? While I completely agree that Hellsing Ultimate is amazing, it's got crazy levels of vampire gore, and an amazing Team 4-star abridged series, it's just too simple. It starts with a girl getting chased by ghouls, which are really just zombies that use guns, call them what you like. Wonder if that's where Firefly got Reavers. Anyway, Dracula here, Alucard, kills the vampire by shooting through her chest. Of course, since she's a virgin, he saves her life by turning her into a vampire. The rest of the series is blood and gore until your eyes turn red and there's dead Nazis everywhere. And that's actually what happened. The problems that keep it at number 10 is that the gore graphics and vampire Nazis don't make a series. Story's small, backstory is mentioned, but you don't even care, you don't even have a reason to care, and the characters don't change. But it is only 10 episodes at 40 minutes each. It's not supposed to last. Number 9. Accel World. This series was interesting. It's the same world as Sword Art Online, only 25 years after the original Sword Art Online started. Now, you got a guy who gets a game from a girl. But of course, it's not just any game. You can use points acquired in the game for real-life abilities, like super fast reflexes, and that's about it. The interesting part, though, is the characters they use in the game are created from their childhood scars, fears, that kind of thing. When I say childhood scars, it's actually mostly children. The oldest kid players of this game are in high school because it requires having this device that was only developed in the last 20 years or so. Well, wouldn't even be 20 years. In fact, it's a very similar device to something that Kirito describes back in Sword Art Online. It's called a neurolinker, and Kirito wanted to use that device so he could blur the lines between the virtual and the reality so he and Asuna could be with Yui. The neurolinker is actually shown to be able to do that. It's able to manipulate sight, whether it's just floating menus that only you can see, or reversing the signs on the boys and girls locker room. Makes you wonder though, did Kirito have something to do with this? Another interesting fact, a guy in the game taught the main girl, Black Lotus, 3 different attacks that all have the same name as attacks Kirito used back in Sword Art. In fact, there's a rumor that that girl is Kirito's daughter, but we don't actually know. The only proof we actually have is the fact that her eye color kind of could be Kirito or Asuna's put together. She has Asuna's face, her long hair, but has Kirito's hair color, loves the color black, uses double blades, and oh, way too many coincidences there. Though, way off topic. As thought out as the background is, and the fights are kinda cool, but to me, the fights weren't great and the characters were 2D. For a series based on fear, anger, and general tragedy, how do you make a one-dimensional character out of that? It doesn't make sense to me. Maybe there's just more to it in the manga, but for the anime, all you know is Crow wants to be stronger to help his girlfriend reach level 10, Line Bell wants her friendship with her friends to last forever, and I don't even know why Cyan Pile's here. Guilt trip, I guess. Maybe the manga has more depth to it, but the anime didn't, which is kinda sad, because it's really the thing that prevents it from being great. Number 8. Sword Art Online. Coming straight off its epilogue of Accel World, Sword Art has many of the same problems. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoy it, which between the approximate 4,000 death count and the really stupid villain at the end of the first season, makes me kind of feel like shit. What happened is the biggest revolution in video gaming since the applying of 2 independent physics engines on a female character, one for each breast. This new revolution, though, is the full dive virtual reality. Or more specifically, the first MMO using it. Sword Art Online, a game that you can't leave once you're in, and death there means death in real life. Of course, they didn't know that going in, but that's what started it all. Most of the fights aren't as exciting as Accel World, but some are way better. The characters are a bit 1 or 2 dimensional, just like Accel World. Other than Kirito, Asuna, Leafa, and Sinon, we don't really know anything about any of the other people. The saving grace here is you can establish a connection with at least one of those 4. Whether it's the sweet girl with the good upbringing, the traumatized childhood, the computer nerd, or the girl who's shunned by her family, you can establish that connection. With exception to Leafa, they do all change as it goes. It does have a good story for the Sword Art, Elfheim, and Gelgun arcs. There is just one huge problem with the series, though. The timeline. Or more specifically, the lack of it. Episode 1 happens on day 1. Episode 2 happens 1 month after that. Episode 3 is about 4 months in, and Episode 4 is 2 years later. Everything from that to Episode 14 happens within 8 months before the game gets cleared. It seems like a lot of wasted time to me, so not bad, but wasted possibilities. Number 7, Zoids New Century. It only avoided 8th because of better fight scenes, suspense, and my own personal enjoyment. Accel World didn't leave me feeling much in the way of emotion afterwards, and Sword Art didn't really give a sense of closing. Zoids, on the other hand, left a feeling that they had won. The fights were good, and somehow always managed to put me on the edge of my seat despite the fact I always could figure out exactly how it was going to end. And it had some great techno music to kick. The problem here is the exact opposite of Sword Art Online. No major storyline. Not a lacking of where there could have been one, but none at all. You could argue why the lack of character development could make it worse, and you could also argue that this one should also be number 6 and not number 7, but sorry, I don't think so. Cheer up though, Giant Fighting Mechs is Giant Fighting Mechs. This is the story of Bit, Cloud, and the Liger Zero and the eternal struggle to be the best they can be. While this one lacks in story, it doesn't actually try to give you a background or a major storyline. Sure, there is a small story, but it's not big. But you know, this one didn't actually need one. Very surprising. Number 6, High School of the Dead. I know you're wondering how a perv anime made it on here. At number 6, no less. Well, the first answer is the small anime roster I have. The second one, however, comes down to the facts. The problems are very well thought out. You have survivors attacking each other, riots, police brutality, even large groups fighting amongst themselves, and people actually refuse to believe that the zombies are actually brainless zombies. That is stuff that people could do, and likely would. Yes, there's a lot of fan service. I understand that. Obviously, you can't take it as a serious story, and the zombie appearance is never explained. But the characters all have backstories, and they do change over time. Not the bimbo nurse, of course. She's just walking tits. And the fight scenes are done very well, but they are way over the top. All in all, it beats Sword Art fairly, but it's arguable with Zoids. Number 5, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Anyone who's seen Zoids New Century is now wondering how this crap beat it for not just 6th, but 5th. Well, it was close. But 5D is really the best Yu-Gi-Oh! They ever made, and as such, it's the only one that actually made this list. The series does have some problems up front. Slow start, story leaves you with nothing but questions, and it's just too different for some Yu-Gi-Oh! Fans to like at first. I know because I was one of them. But whether you like 5Ds over GX or not, I made my decision here based on the categories. But moving on, it's a similar world like all the other Yu-Gi-Ohs. It's ruled by children's card games. Only this time they play them on motorcycles. Don't worry, I'm sure they're trained professionals. Or at least the ones that aren't putting their bikes together from junk in the slums. There must be one hell of a gap between the rich and the poor here, because they aren't even allowed to have dual monster cards. Why? I really got nothing either. So anyway, despite that, they managed to get whole decks, dual runner bikes, and of course, save the world. Pretty generic story, but with card games. Earlier stories are fractured, and you'll have to piece them together to find the backstory. But once you find the backstory, it actually beat GX, because GX didn't have a backstory much, give or take Alexis Rhodes. The duels themselves remind me of the good old GX comebacks, but that's been a thing since the original Yu-Gi-Oh! The thing that makes the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the backstories and the changes the main characters have to go through, because besides Leo and one of the villains from the first season, every character has a backstory and or major change in some way. So it had a great score and 2 decent, and that's how it got to number 5. Number 4, Kaguya No Stigma. I understand there's incest, but that stuff is implied. It's not forward, and if you don't even think about it, you won't even notice. On to the actual thing. It was shaping up to be a very good story, but the writer passed away in 2009, so it's never going to be finished. What you had was a guy who was kicked out of the family because he can't use fire magic, and now he's a mercenary. You have the girl, who's the heir to that very same family, and wants absolutely nothing to do with him. Problem is, he's framed for killing 2 members of that family, and one thing leads to another. You end up saving the little brother, killing a demon, and yeah. There is more to it than that, and Season 2 is actually even better. It does have its own problems, though. The characters seem very unlikable at first, and are very flat, or at least at first glance. But I will say, if unlikable characters killed an anime, the numbers 10, 9, 7, 6, 4, 3, and even number 1 itself would have been dead on this list. But I do have some other reasons that put it above high school. First, the fights are impressive, but more than that, they're actually simple. There's not much widespread damage. There are shows out there like Dragon Ball Z that blows up entire mountains for the sake of blowing up entire mountains. In this, you see a building get completely cut through and collapse. But that's actually the only big thing. You don't actually have a total destruction except one crater to destroy a demon. But I'm digressing. Next problem, as I already stated, the characters are a bit 2D. But each one does have a backstory that was never really thought about. And the problem with it is, the show was cut short. They were just starting to develop, and you thought more was going to be coming. It had 2 more seasons worth, so the characters would have just started to change. I don't know what to say. It's a shame it's gone. Number 3, Soul Eater. I'm actually ashamed to say this, but the first time I saw episode 1 of Soul Eater, I thought it was going to be a stupid series and actually never started to watch more. The next time I watched Soul Eater, I turned on the TV right as Soul was breaking out of Maka's chest in episode 9. Needless to say, it was a big what the fuck, and I'd actually only found it by accident. I wouldn't have actually watched any more after that if it wasn't for my friend Shadow Death Machine 1 recommending it to me. I am so grateful for that, because it is such a great series. Tell me, what do you get when you throw in a bookworm, a wannabe cool guy, 2 criminals, the worst case of OCD ever, a shy girl, and the ultimate god complex? Well, you're gonna get Blackstar saying that God has a Blackstar complex. But besides that, you get Soul Eater. That's the main characters. Backstory is not a big thing in this series, but character and character development was huge. Mix that up with the great battles in the original world based on Halloween, I don't know what to say. Corona doesn't know how to deal with it all, but you know it's Soul Eater when the moon has a rape face. Number 2, Zoids, Chaotic Century. This is the biggest blast from the past I have on this list, the only one that comes from before the year 2000. Zoids was the first anime I ever saw, and I couldn't actually watch it all the time because I didn't have cable. But when I found out there was Zoids Chaotic Century, Oh boy, I binged that shit. In fact, just last month, I have officially finished everything from Chaotic Century all the way to Genesis. Opinion, Genesis wasn't bad. It was actually better than Fusers, but neither of them can compare to Chaotic or New Century. When I was making this list, I had already had 7 of them chosen out and thought Soul Eater was going to be completely invincible at number 2. Well, I looked at an anime list on a website. I saw this, blew Soul Eater straight out of the water, and that was that. There is one major problem that makes it hard to compete for number 1, but I will mention that later. Now, story. You have a guy getting chased by a Zoid. Gets chased into a ruin. He finds a Zoid. That Zoid gets him another Zoid, and he fights the chaser off. Then you find a girl with no memory. He promises to help her find her memories. They meet some friends along the way, help out in the war, and I could go all day about how great this story goes, so I'll stop. The show here hits the ground running and does not stop, though. It is full of action. It may give you a rest, but you're really just dying for the next part to start. I know that only one character has any kind of backstory, but they all grow as you go along, and they all do develop. The story curveballs a lot, but it actually just keeps getting better. This one pretty much takes number 2 by default. Alright, number 1, Fairy Tail. I have absolutely no idea how to put this. Makes great fights, great characters, great story, rivalry, friendship, tears, laughter, and magic together. Do it all damn near perfectly, and what do you get? Fairy Tail. This story is too crazy to even begin to explain in this video. This series is able to make you laugh at stupidity, be on the edge of your seat in suspense, and then cry tears of joy within 10 minutes of each other, if not all at once. This story is so good you just wish you could dive in and become a member of this guild. And you know, one of the greatest details that I love about it? Even the villains have backstories. How many series have you had someone try to kill your main characters, and then a season or 2 later, you're forgiving them after learning why? Yes, you can forgive them, even though they are fantasy characters in a TV show. But you know, it's got a bunch of other things that are great about it. How many series set up side characters only to use them as main characters later? Now do that for about 7 to 12 other people. What about a crazy puzzle hidden in all the seemingly unimportant details? Fairy Tail did that, and more. Zoid's major flaw that I mentioned was its absolute lack of backstory. But if you know where to look, Fairy Tail almost has too much! I don't know, I just love putting the pieces together about all the things, how they link up. I said that Zoids had a problem that made it kind of unable to fight for number 1, but that's not actually completely true. Fairy Tail destroyed the competition in all my things. Even without my second personal favoritism on this list, nothing even came close. You know, I know people who think that Fairy Tail is better than Naruto and Bleach. I have another that puts it on par with One Piece. I haven't seen any of those 3, so I'm not going to judge. There is one problem with the present Fairy Tail. I'm not liking the power and consistency in the Grand Magic games. No, the characters are just not where they should be. But you know, despite that, that's my number 1, Fairy Tail. And I think Lucy said it best. I love this guild. So thanks to all of you for watching this, and feel free to comment. Just please don't try to get angry at me for not including something on this list, or maybe you think I got it wrong. I don't have a huge anime arsenal. In fact, it's for just that reason that next time I'm pretty sure I'm not even going to do anything anime related. Maybe music, maybe some live TV show, I don't know. But for now, I'm Stealthweasel01, and I'm out.